Well, hey guys, thanks so much for coming to the GivingRocket.com webinar today. My name is Casey Graham, and I'm the founder of GivingRocket.com, and we are so fired up that you've taken just a few minutes out of your day to be here with us. It's good to be with you. I wish I could actually come into the room with you and be with your church. We got churches all over the world that are going to be on this webinar today, and so we're so excited about that. We've got probably 400 or 500 churches that are connecting in right now to watch with you and to watch with your church. And so before we get started, the first thing I'd like to do is I just want to pray for us. I want to pray for this time together, and then we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about how to create a broke-proof church. And so I'm fired up. Let me pray. God, I want to thank you for every person that's watching this right now. I want to pray right now for us specifically that churches would come alive in their finances, and that you would use the stuff that we talk about on today's webinar. Because this is your stuff. You talk all about money through Scripture. There's so much in the Bible. I pray that you would take everything that we talk about today and really make it come to life in the churches that are connected in today's webinar. So thank you, God, that we have this opportunity. We love you. We pray this in your name. Amen. Well, today's webinar is called How to Create a Broke-Proof Church. And if I were you, the first question I'd be asking is, who are you, and why should I even listen to you? Like, what do you have to say? You're just a guy I maybe got an email from or on a website somewhere or something like. So why should I listen to you? And what I would say about that is I'm just journeying along in this with you, and we've worked with. At GivingRocket.com, we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of churches, and we're serving currently 277,000, a little over 277,000 people through GivingRocket.com, our membership program, which is awesome, that helps churches increase operational revenue from 11% to 39% over a 12-month period. And so as we've gone around the country and even other countries, and we started working with churches, we've just seen patterns start to emerge. And they're patterns that happen again and again and again and again and again. And what we've seen is that patterns, especially when it comes to the area of budgeting and knowing the numbers and the financial side of the church, it's just not very much talked about. And if it's talked about in a boring way with spreadsheets and people with just suits on that aren't relating to a current reality of what's happening in today's time, in today's culture. And so I spent, before doing that and traveling around the country and the world, connecting with leaders and helping, as I spent time as the CFO of a church. And so I've been over this process before in a church and carried it out and talked about what we're talking about today, and worked through budgeting, work through financial stuff, work through spending systems, work through what reports people should see, work through all of that kind of stuff. And so after spending years of doing that and years of going around helping other churches, what we found is just something that's just, it really is. It's like, if you're like, what's the magic? There's a magical thing that we've stumbled upon as we started working with some churches, and we found something that really works. And so that's just a little bit about me, and I'd love to know about you. You can email us anytime. I'm Casey at GivingRocket.com. Love to hear from you. And what else would I would be asking if I were you is like, why does this matter? Like, what does this even matter? And here's the reality: is we started thinking about this, is that churches are just, when I say broke, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily shut down, although there are tons of churches shutting down. And you may think that will never happen to you, but what I am going to tell you what's happening, and what's happening all across the world, is churches not necessarily closing the doors, and that is happening. But more often what I see is the churches, they're shutting down the vision that God has placed on your heart as a leader. And that vision that's inside of you, that vision that you feel like the things that you want to accomplish, you're just saying, you're shutting it down. You can't. You're having to have hard conversations, and you're leading with a no instead of a yes. You no, we can't spend that. No, we can't do that outreach thing. No, we can't do that big event. No, we can't reach the community in this way because we just don't have the funding. We don't have the finances. And so I want to spend our time together today and bring some hope to your situation. I want to bring some hope that there can be margin. You can run a church and lead a church and have massive margin without being a hoarder, but the margin being there so when obstacles come up or opportunities come up, you can connect in and you can really take advantage of those opportunities, and the obstacles won't kill you. if you have margin. And so I really do believe that this next year, this next month, the next quarter can be some of the best times in your church as it relates to finances, as it relates to budgeting and creating a broke-proof church. And the simplest and the most powerful thing that we found is something that's just been, it's really changed the way we look at budgeting. It's really changed the way we look at church finances. We stumbled upon in a church in Birmingham, Alabama, which is actually my hometown. Roll Tide, go Alabama. I'm a huge Alabama football fan, and we will win the national championship this year and every other year after. That's the way we think in Alabama. So, but Pastor Chris Hodges from Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, Alabama. As I started going around working with churches, I was working with a church planting group called ARC, with Association of Related Churches, and started learning about their process and started learning about what Pastor Chris and Church of the Highlands do for their budgeting. And I saw something that I'd never seen before. And it was actually one of the most powerful but simple budgeting techniques and budgeting things. And this is kind of the big reveal. And you're going to go, well, that's it? Yeah, because it's going to be huge for your church. It'll create you a massive margin, and it'll allow you guys to really connect in to creating the margin that you need to accomplish the ministry that God has put on your heart. And I started learning from them, and I started seeing that man, they're a great church. They're reaching tons of people. That they buy buildings with cash. They have so much margin. They do so many things so well. But when I heard this underlying principle, when I really saw it and connected in with it, I was like, that's it. That's it. And when I heard it, we started spreading it as much as we possibly could. They do a great job of teaching it to all their churches, and we're teaching it to churches and watching churches do this and be successful. Literally a few minutes ago, I was talking to a church planter who runs 150 people in Atlanta, Georgia, who said, we use that principle, man, and it has created margin, massive margin in our church. It's created buffer. It's created opportunity. And here's what he said. This is exactly what he said. His name is Will. And Will said, is that we've been able to say yes to just about everything. And I thought that was awesome for them to say that. And so here's what it is. All right, here we go. It's to budget on 90% of last year's income. Budget 90% on last year's income. And you would go, well, what in the world does that mean? Let me break it down real simple. If you have $100,000 a year come in, not budgeted, but actually money that came in last year, that the next year your budget would be $90,000. So whatever comes in, you take 90% of it, and that's what you budget, okay? Now, if you go over the budget that you had the previous year, and let's say your budget was set at $100,000 last year, and you took in $200,000, well, you would take $200,000 and budget on 90% of that. So you want to take whatever came in through your gifts, through your donations, and budget on 90% of that. And I know immediately what some of you people are thinking. You're thinking exactly what I thought. That's impossible. I can't do that. My church, what do you mean? We're just trying to make it what we currently have. We can't even make our budget. What do you mean? Cut 10% of what's coming in, and that's what our budget needs to be. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I know that you may be thinking, I can't do this, or we can't do this, or our church staff can't do this. You absolutely can do it. You absolutely can do it. You've just got to make the decision to do so. And I'm going to give you some tips on how you can do it here in just a little bit. But, it's better than what churches are normally doing. And there's just stupid things that we're seeing that churches do when it comes to this area of budgeting. And this 90% rule, this budgeting on 90% is really a reality. But here's what a lot of churches are doing. I don't know what you're doing, but check out a couple of these things. The first thing that a lot of churches are doing is just ignoring the numbers. And I'm going to be straight up honest with you with this, is that most churches and most church leaders that I talk to, when it comes to like budgeting and it comes to numbers, if I said what came in last year, most church leaders can't even tell me. We ignore the numbers. And we say, oh, I'm not good at the numbers. Oh, I'm not good at that. That's not what my strong suit is. I didn't get into this to be all about money. And we make excuses and we talk about, so we ignore the numbers. I'm going to tell you right now, Pastor, ministry, I'm going to look right at you. I'm going to tell you right now, you cannot ignore the numbers. It is not biblical or wise or being a good steward to ignore the numbers any longer. Every single leader listening to this, you've got to engage into the numbers, knowing the numbers on a weekly, monthly, quarterly and annual basis. And I'm going to tell you later in this exactly which numbers to know, which report you need to look at, all of that kind of stuff. I'll make it simple for you. Not some accounting thing with all these reports and spreadsheets you don't understand, but simple stuff for you, okay? But that's what a lot of people, they budget on. They just budget on, they just pull a number out of there. We just ignore the numbers. Another thing I see that's just, I really think stupid is we over-spiritualize the budget. Over-spiritualizing is crazy. It's like going, hey, what's our faith budget for this year? Let me talk to you about a faith budget. That's how kind of like the U.S. government budgets. We just spend a bunch of, it just doesn't even matter. We're just going to spend a lot of money. A lot of churches, we just create this faith thing out there of this deal, and we say we want God to come through. We want to have faith. I'm going to tell you right now that in Scripture, I don't see anywhere where Jesus, or if you look in the Old Testament, that puts faith and money talked about in the same sentence. I don't know anywhere. And so when it comes to money, I think oftentimes we need to deal with reality and deal with what's really happening more than just saying we're going to have some faith that God's going to come through and have this faith budget and that kind of thing. Now here's the deal. If you do have a faith budget, or if it's something that you're praying for God to give you something bigger this next year, well, that's great. Just don't budget on it. Just let it come through. And if God fulfills that number and He brings in something, well, that is awesome. And that's what we would hope that would happen for your church. But in reality, when it comes to budgeting, we're not going to budget on faith. We're going to budget on wisdom. And wisdom would say, look at what's currently happening, make an assessment of it. Don't budget on 100% of it, but budget where you have some margin. So what came in last year, we're going to take 90%, and that's what we're going to create our budget on this next year, and we're going to make it work. And, another thing is that people think, that I think, is I can't afford to do this. I can't afford, Casey, you said this principle and I'm immediately checking out because I cannot afford to do it. My finance team's not going to go for that. My elders aren't going to go for that. My staff is not going to go for that. Like, I can't afford to do this. I'm going to talk to you real clear, Pastor. You can't afford not to do it. You can't afford not to do it because margin will allow you to accomplish the ministry that God has laid on your heart. It's just the way it is, okay? When I see people that have margin, they have space, they have plenty of room when it comes to their budget, or it comes to what they have in their checking account or paying their staff, and they're not worried all the time about what's coming in next week and living week to week to week, those people accomplish more. Those people accomplish more than people that are just looking to survive. I'm telling you, thriving is much better than surviving. Survival mentality will cut your vision short. And so, as we've traveled around and we've started working with all of these churches, the number one thing that you might be thinking right now is that your church is different. And you may be saying, well, yeah, that may work in Birmingham, Alabama, but that's sure not going to work in New York, or that's sure not going to work in Sydney, Australia, or that's not going to work in Barrie, Ontario, Canada, or that's not going to work, in all of these different areas. I'm going to tell you right now, your church is not different. It's not. It's really not. Every church I talk to says my church is different. Your church is not different. Your vision's different. You're different. The DNA's different. But as it relates to how money works, it works the same everywhere. You've got to lean into this. I'm going to beg you to lean into this. And I'm about to give you 4 things that you can do to make this reality. Not just tell you what to do. Because at Giving Rocket, one of the things that we do is we just provide help to help you know how to do it. And here's how you can budget on 90% of last year's income. The first thing is this, is that you just got to make the decision to do this before you ask how. You've got to make the decision to do this before you even know how you're going to do it. You've just got to make a decision today to say, you know what, we're just going to do this. I don't know how we're going to do it. We're just going to do this. And you would say, is that dumb? No, it's not dumb. It's kind of like somebody, the first time I ran a marathon, I made the decision, actually somebody signed me up for a marathon, which is absolutely insane. Somebody signed me up for a marathon, and I was joking with them. I said, hey, sign me up for a marathon. I'd love to run it with you. And they signed me up and bought a hotel room for me. And they made it almost a decision for me, but the principle I learned in that was like, I never would have signed up for that. I never would have done that because I wouldn't know how to do that. The most I'd ever run was 4 or 5 miles. And I was going to run 26.2 miles. But what I learned from that is that sometimes you have to make the decision of what you're going to do before you know how you're going to do it. And making that decision, I promise, if you make the decision today and you lean into it, that God will create some ways for you to know how to do it. And if you start over the next couple months really leaning into this principle, really leaning into not living broke, not living week to week, not living with slim margins, but living in the full potential that God's given you, if you can do that, I really believe that God will show you how to do it. So make the decision today. Make it, say, we're going to do this. The second thing I would say is to engage your team. Engage your team. One of the reasons you can't do this is because you and some other people, and not your entire staff, maybe some finance team or maybe you and your leadership team, you're not engaging all of the different levels of your team. The budgeting process should be a shared vision process. And the question you want to ask is this: how would you run your ministry on 90% and let them make some of the choices as it relates to this? How would you run your budget? How would you run your ministry on 90% of last year and say, guys, I would love to give everybody a budget increase. I would love for all of us to have a bunch of money. I would love for that. But how would we do that on 90%? And to sit down and even look at the overall budget and look at it as a team involved. I'm telling you, it is a team sport, and engaging into that process and looking at it and really looking at some stuff and with your staff and your finance team and engage them in the process. And I just want to tell you right now, if you do that, if you engage people, they're going to be so much more likely to help you figure this out than if you just go out and say you try to do this on yourself, or if you just say, hey, I can't do that. You can do it. You just have to engage your team. The third thing is to cut stuff. Now, this is where my heart goes out to you because I've been in your situation before. But the reality is that you need to make some big changes. You need to make big changes. And you may have got on this webinar today hoping for some tips and techniques that you can kind of apply. But I'm going to tell you about this. This one is a painful reality. But if you want to make it happen, if you want to create margin, you've got to make some big changes. Because here's what usually happens. When churches try to budget and cut things, and that we go and we go after all the little items like printing paper and go, oh, instead of doing it color, let's do it black and white. We could save $5 a month doing that. Or we can save on this copier lease. It's going to be $20 a month. And so we try to look for all of this small stuff and all the little things that we can cut. And I just want to tell you that is not going to cut it. You've got to make some big changes. You've got to make some big changes. And you would go, well, what does that mean? Well, it may mean that you cut staff. It may, but here's what I'm saying. You kind of come on this webinar if you tell me to fire somebody. But here's what most churches do. Most churches try to penalize everybody when it comes to the budgeting, and they say, well, it's not fair to penalize just one person or one ministry area or one program that we have going on, so we're going to cut everybody's everything 90%. Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, so what you really want to do in this process, well, how it's going to help you with your vision is it's going to clarify for you the things that really make a difference, the things that really work, the things that you can really go after, and then all the other stuff you've got to put on the chopping block and make a decision, and your staff. And listen, I'm not saying you just need to go out and fire all your staff, but there may be a staff person or two. There may be a position, that part-time position that you're holding on to, that you don't need to, that you absolutely could get volunteers to step up and to fill that role. And I want to tell you right now that you've got to make some big changes. You got to look at some big items and make some cuts going into next year's budget or next quarter's budget. And if you do that, and if you're willing to make that sacrifice, I promise that there's going to be some supernatural stuff. It just seems like when people make the decision to say, you know what, we're just going to look at the stuff that really, really works. We're going to focus in on that and not all this other stuff. And we're going to budget well in the areas that we do well, and the stuff that needs to go, it needs to go. And so cutting stuff and making that decision instead of just making everybody miserable, okay? So I know that's a tough one. It's painful, but I promise. And you may just need that little bit of permission today to go and make some decisions that you need to make. The fourth thing is to address your systems. Address your systems. You may think you can't live off of a budget that's 90% of last year's income because you can't live off this budget. And it's more than that. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, your systems are one of the reasons why. And when I was a CFO at a church, one of the things I found is that if we didn't have a monthly spending system and have somebody who wakes up in the morning, your church may be small. The average church on this webinar is going to be between 200 and 300 people. That's just going to be the average of who's on here, okay? And so I know that. But I'm just telling you, whether your church is 200 or 300 or 2,000 or 3,000 or 20,000, you've got to have spending systems, and somebody, whether it's a volunteer, a CFO, the chief financial officer, or something else, or even you as the pastor taking responsibility, to look at where people on your staff, the entire staff, every month, and looking at the budget to actual expenses. Okay, and there needs to be accountability to hold into account their ability to spend money correctly and to stay within their budget, and having a spending system. And so what we did at Mountain Lake, and this is what, I mean, it really, really worked really well, is that we just looked at what's called a budget to actual report. And the budget to actual says, here's what your budget is for this month. And what we did is that the way we budgeted is we budgeted where people can only spend a certain amount every month. So let's just take it, for instance, if you had a $1,200 annual budget. Well, in January, you couldn't just go spend $1,200. We broke it out over a monthly period to where you could spend $100 a month. And if you needed to go over that budgeted amount, then you had to run it by me or our senior team to get approval to make the expense. And just by doing that and doing that in your church, that's going to create a spending system that's going to help you know where the money's going and sticking to it and be able to live off of this. And I promise your spending system will be a great way and a huge help in doing this. And so as we've been talking about this, I don't know where your heart's landed on this, but I'm going to tell you, if you budget on 90% of last year's income, and you make the decision, you just go, I don't know how we're going to do this. I have no idea, but we're going to make the decision that we are going to do it. And if you engage your staff in this conversation, and if you make some decisions to cut some big things, not just little things, but cut some big things, so you can focus on the stuff that you do, your core vision, core priorities, core thing that's going to reach your community for Christ. And if you address your spending systems to where you have a step-by-step system that is clear, and somebody wakes up in the mornings over that, if you do that, you can live off 90% of last year's income. You absolutely can. I've seen churches make the transition and do it. And so I want to challenge you today to do that. And that's going to create margin. But here's something else. It's not just about creating a margin by cutting, but I want to talk with you about if you're here for Giving Rocket, and if you're one of our Giving Rocket members, you know that we're so fired up about helping churches with this. But it's not just about cutting and reducing, but it's also about increasing. So imagine this. I want you to imagine. Come in here with it. Come in. Imagine if you lived off 90% of last year's income, and you dropped down and you lived off of that, and you figured out how to do it, and you made the decision to do that, and you made that decision this month, and you live off 90% of last year's income. But then also you increased, check this out, you increased the giving in your church this next year 10%. Okay, can you imagine that? Let's just say your church is a $250,000 budget. You've got $250,000 coming in, and that's what your budget is, and you increased it by 10%. That's $25,000 additional dollars. And if you budgeted next year off of 90% of that, you're going to be creating about $50,000 of margin by increasing giving and living off 90%. And if you'll do this, if you'll connect in with this philosophy, if you'll connect in with this principle, you will have a tremendous amount of vision momentum moving forward and doing that. But you will go, well, how do I do that? How do I increase my giving? And I want to speak from my heart to you on this and tell you that that's what we do. That's what I do in the morning, is I wake up and think through, how did churches increase giving? And we've spent years testing this stuff. And today, you have the opportunity to jump in and be a part. And that's what we help churches. I'm going to give you 5 things that are going to help you increase your giving. And the first thing is just a weekly giving talk. A weekly giving talk. And we do this for you at GivingRocket.com. We have a weekly giving talk script that we write for your church. And I'm just telling you, if you just did that, if you just did a weekly giving talk and you lived off 90% and you just did the weekly giving talk, you would create massive margin in your church. We're seeing it happen all around the world. We literally write it for you, and you go, what is a giving talk? A giving talk is the 2 minutes before you take up your offering. Every person, every pastor listening to me, come on, tune into this. That 60 seconds, 120 seconds before you take up your offering, you have a great opportunity to help people, help them understand what the offering is, why you're taking it, and how this makes a difference in the world. And we write them on either we use statistics, we use stories, and we use scriptures. And we rotate and making sure that we keep the giving talk fresh. We write that for you every single week. You can connect in with that. If you jump over and you become a member of GivingRocket.com, we help you with that. We also help you with what's called copy and paste communication. So if you can cut and paste something and send an email out or send a letter out, then that sending out communication consistently is what's going to help you. Most churches send out bad direct mail, send out bad emails that people don't read. We have a team of people that research this stuff, that know how to get people to open the email, read it, and then give online, or open the piece of mail that we're going to literally write for you. You just put your name in there, your church logo, and we write it for you, that people can connect into, cut and paste communication. That you can just cut it, paste it in, and it's done for you. And we send that stuff out every single month for you to do based on a calendar of what you need to be sending, when you need to be sending it. Most churches don't do that. Okay, now check this out. Can you imagine living on 90% of last year's income, and you do giving talks, and then you use copy and paste communication, something that we're going to provide for you. It's awesome to increase your giving. Imagine the ministries that can be funded. Imagine the marriages that can be put together because you're going to be able to reach that new family in that new series. Imagine what can happen in your church. It can be awesome. The third thing is just coaching like this, where we have practical step-by-step coaching that you're going to get every single month. Practical, helpful videos, practical, helpful teleseminars, webinars, as much coaching as we can provide for you. You're going to get that, because what we found is that most churches, the average church watching this, does not have somebody that wakes up in the morning thinking about this. And I want to do it for you. I am so super passionate about helping your church increase your giving that we wake up and we're going to coach you based on the 5 cycles of generosity that happen throughout the year. And we're going to keep reminding you, hey, here's what's coming up next. Here's what's coming up next. Connect into this. Remember, Christmas is coming. Remember, New Year's is coming. There's new stuff that happens all the time, and keeping you up to date on that, on technology and all that kind of stuff. Imagine if you had a coach. Imagine if you had that. Imagine if you also had access to our resource vault. And I want to be completely honest with you. Our resource vault is just good. It's just good. It's just got tons of done-for-you documents, forms, samples, examples, other churches, previous giving talks, and all of this kind of stuff. Imagine if you didn't have to create from scratch, and imagine if you had an opportunity to connect into something like that. Imagine what it would be like to live off 90%. Imagine what it would be like to do those giving talks, to have copy and paste communication that's sent out, just sent out at the right times. Imagine if you had those different things that were going on. You can increase your giving significantly this next year, and we want to help you with that. And then the last thing is that we're just going to send you an ebook every month. And so you'd say, well, how do I connect it in with that? It's really simple. You just go to givingrocket.com/not broke, because you're not going to be broke connecting into this. And so we want to ask you, it's going to be a 1-month trial membership. Okay, you've got 1 month where it's for $1 and it's a trial, and you can connect in and connect over, and we would love to connect with you to help you, because not only on budgeting the 90% on doing that, but then increasing your giving is a huge piece of this. And somebody's got to help you do that, and we want to help you do that. So givingrocket.com, you're going to do / and then you're going to do not broke, because you're not going to be broke any longer. And then you'd say, well, how much is it after the trial? After the trial, it breaks down to about $24 and some change a week. And so it's very, very, if I can't help you increase your giving more than $24 a week, something is wrong. And I need to be fired immediately from this, and you need not listen to anything that we talk about or send out to you. So that's how simple it is, and that's how it breaks down, and we would love to help you. Oh, and there's a bonus that you're going to get. You also are going to get, which I'm fired up about, is a Know the Numbers complete resource. This is just a short version, and we're about to talk about knowing the numbers and all that kind of stuff that's going to help you with your staff and reporting and what you need to know and not know and all that kind of stuff. But it's a full resource with coaching and videos. It's a $300 resource that you're going to get for free, for zero, just by starting the trial membership. And the resource is almost done, and we've got it in the hopper. And so when it gets completely finished and all the videos polished and all that kind of stuff, then you're going to have access to this $299 resource for absolutely for free, for $1 for giving us a try. So go ahead and jump over there. We want to help you increase your giving, okay? And so that's what we want to help you with on the income side, because I really believe that we can help. Now, on the other side, talking about broke proof, there's 5 numbers that every staff member should know. There's 5 numbers that every staff member should know. And I want to stop right here, and I want to say something. Every staff member, not just one staff, every staff member should know. Okay? And so this is a big change in a lot of churches, because a lot of you guys, there's just a few people that know the numbers, just the finance team or the senior pastor, and the student guy doesn't even care. He's not even connected in, or the children's person doesn't care. Whatever. But I'm just telling you right now, every staff member needs to know these numbers, and these are going to be super helpful in creating buy-in, so you won't have a broke church. You will remain broke. You will continue to be broke if you do not have buy-in from your staff. And so let's talk about this. The 5 numbers that everybody needs to know. Number 1 is the overall giving, overall giving. Now, here's the deal. They don't need to know this every week, and we got to get out of weekly thinking. Just in case you want to know, you've got to quit thinking about everything on a week to week to week basis. If you're thinking that way, it's broke thinking. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't know those numbers, but everybody needs to know it monthly. And you need to create monthly charts and monthly graphs that show very simply what the overall giving number is. That's a number that everybody needs to know. And overall giving is very important because that's the only number really at the end of the day that really matters as it relates to budgeting and spending and all of that kind of stuff, is what actually came in. The second number is overall expenses. You guys as a team, you need to have your team connected in and knowing here's what came in and here's what the overall expenses were. And in doing that, you're going to create buy-in from your team to see, like, hey, the goal is not just to spend everything in our budget. The goal is to be wise steward and to create margin. And so you have income and overall expenses for everybody to see and everybody to understand in a simple fashion. The third thing is what's called per capita giving or per head giving. And for per capita giving, here's why that's an important number, is that you want to know, based on each person that shows up into your church every week, how much money each person is giving. Now, at Giving Rocket, we use the total amount of people. So we include children, students, whoever's there in your building on a Sunday morning. We use the entire crowd. So if 1,000 people, children, student, adults, all there, you just take, it's a very, very, very simple deal. You just divide that number into what came into your offerings that week, and that will give you your per capita number. And you want to look and see how much per head, how much came in, and you want that number to grow consistently. So you know that how much, so if you have 1,000 people and they're giving it $40 a head, you know that if there's 2,000 people, you can start to look into the future and see what can happen. And you want to look at what's happening in people's lives and use that as a discipleship tool to move it from each person's giving 40 to they're giving 45 or whatever that amount needs to be for your church and that you're trying to go after. So that's a very important number that everybody needs to see and understand of which way the church is going. Are people connecting in and giving more, or are they giving less? The fourth thing is the number of first-time givers. The number of first-time givers. Now, what's so interesting to me is that churches are notorious for talking about first-time guests, but leaving out first-time givers. And that's so interesting to me because Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6 that where our treasure is, that's where our heart will be also. And so for me, I'm looking at first-time givers as a spiritual decision, not just a financial decision. If that's something you want to tweet that out because it's good. It's good because it's true. Is that first-time givers, when somebody gives for the first time, it is a spiritual decision, not just a financial decision, okay? And so it's just like them raising their hand saying, I want to be baptized, or I want to be in a small group, or I want to connect in to volunteer team, or whatever those different things that you have people to connect into. And so you have the opportunity to acknowledge and to recognize, and I've got a whole system on first-time givers, but you want to connect into that, and you want your team to celebrate the amount of people that are giving for the very, very, very first time. And everybody should know that because that's spiritual decisions that are happening, and those people, you got to steward them, and there's tremendous opportunity in how you communicate with them with notes, with follow-up, sending them to online giving. I could give you an entire system on that. I don't have time today, but everybody needs to know that. Number 5 is percent that came in given digitally. The percent that came in that was given digitally. And you would say, why does that matter? Well, here's why it matters for you, pastor, leader. Here's why this matters. Because the digital money comes in more consistently than the other money. And so you want to connect in and you want to grow the amount of people who are giving recurring gifts to your church's website, okay? And so you want to be recruiting and you want to be asking people to give online. I've got an entire system on that as well called Automate the Important, where you help people automate the important thing in their life of giving. But everybody on your team needs to know about that and care and champion it. And I would even say for you and your staff to be the people who lead the way and give online, because the people who give online and give online recurring gifts are the most consistent recurring gifts that you can count on, and money that's going to come in consistently every single month. And so when you think about that, that's just 5 simple numbers. I mean, just overall giving, overall expenses, per capita giving, number of first-time givers, and percent given digitally. And so those are the 5 things to make it very simple. Now, there's 75 other numbers out there that people need to be looking at. Accountants and bookkeepers, finance team, maybe you, pastor, you need to have a report that goes beyond that if you're looking at more things and specifics and all that. But don't confuse your team, because if you're looking at everything, if you report everything, then nothing is important. So make Pick the important numbers. And you may say, Casey, I'm not going to use your 5 numbers. Well, I don't care. Use simple numbers that matter, and they're going to get people to care and connect in to this philosophy that we're going to live, and we're going to do finances better this year than we did them last year. And everybody's going to care because Jesus has given us this money as a steward to these resources and of this church. And so, pastors and staff, you both need to know the numbers. And I know this may be a revolutionary idea for everybody to be engaged in this, but your staff, the team, all of that connected in really will make an enormous difference of you. And so when you start thinking about this and you start piecing this pie together of what we talked about today, how to create a broke-proof church. I mean, connect into this, guys. Yeah, here it is. Budget on 90% of last year's income. Budget. Make the decision. Go today. Boom. We're going to do this. This is what we're going to do. Get fired up about creating the margin that you're going to have in your church. Live off 90% of last year's income. And then if you connect in, and what you need to do is you need to go right now. You need to connect in. We're going to help you do this. I want to help your church. I wish I could come through the screen. I'm so fired up. I'm so passionate about this. I want to help you increase your giving. I want to help you with your giving talks. We want to help you. We want to help your church. We want to do this stuff for you because we know you're not going to wake up in the morning and think about it. We know. So connecting over. So budget off 90%. Connect into Giving Rocket. It's so cheap. I mean, think about it. It's the most inexpensive, less than $25 a week. It's just unbelievable. So you have the opportunity to just try it out. It's just $1. So go to givingrocket.com/notbroke and connect over there and start your dollar trial. Now, here's the deal with that. And I didn't say this earlier, but I'm going to say it now. We're going to offer 200 of these trial memberships. And after the 200 trial memberships, we're going to take this thing back down to the normal offer, and we're not going to include the broke proof. And so for the first 200 people, and we're going to have 400 or 500 people on this webinar for the first 200, and I know that people are already responding. That's just the way it is. I know you're going to be connecting into that, and I want you to connect over to givingrocket.com/notbroke, and we're going to throw in this whole know the numbers, the entire system, all the spreadsheets, everything for your staff. And here's the deal. You can take your entire staff through the know the numbers deal, and it's a coaching guide to help everybody on your staff and your ministry team care about this, and it can be the resource that helps you create the margin that you need. So if you're connected into Giving Rocket, we're helping you increase your giving. You're budgeting on 90%, and then you've got the staff where they know the numbers, and they know the simple numbers, and there's 5 numbers that everybody needs to know, and you make it this simple. Those 3 things, 90% of last year's income, connect into givingrocket.com/notbroke, and then you have the third thing of 5 numbers everybody needs to know. You have those 3 things working together. You're going to create a broke-proof church. You're going to live with margin. You're going to live with margin. And as my pastor friend Carrie Newhoff says, you're going to live with margin, and that will allow you to then live fully on mission for your community, for the nation, and for the world. And so I wish I could meet with all of you right now. I wish I could connect in. I wish we could, just really have some time together. But we can't as it relates to the video stuff. But I want to let you know that right now I'm available, and I'm going to give you my email address. It's casey@givingrocket.com, and feel free, email me right now any question you have about this, because we know that this is a tough thing, and we want to connect back with you. You can also connect with us on Twitter. I'm at Casey Graham. At Casey Graham is my Twitter name, and I'd love to connect with you and let me know that you're fired up and you're going to do something about this. And you can connect in our Facebook fan page as well that you can find on our website at givingrocket.com. So we're so fired up. Thank you so much for allowing us to have this time today. Go ahead, connect over givingrocket.com/notbroke, and we're going to start a relationship that's going to help you lead a broke-proof church.